Therefore, this meeting can be watched at any time by anyone with a connection. There is a slight delay between the meeting and the broadcast on the YouTube channel of approximately 30 seconds. Webcasting officer, please can you commence the broadcast and confirm?
Hi Emma, that's live now.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Performance Management Board. Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings, and for ease of reference these are as follows. Please only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the Chairman know that you wish to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce speakers in the order at which the request has been made unless there is a point of order at which we will give way. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting. Members are asked to mute your microphones when you're not speaking and to consider turning off your video if there's interference on your connection to this meeting. Please bear in mind that there may be a lag between you speaking and other attendees hearing you. Presentations for this evening's meeting have been circulated to all members in advance and will be visible on the screen. Please indicate on the chat function if there is a problem. Members, when you are referring to paragraphs and reports, please quote the relevant page and paragraph number, please. There is no private business scheduled for this evening's meeting. However, members are reminded that it is your responsibility to ensure that your venue and connection is secure. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, please try to join immediately and I will reconnect you. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or a point of order. The chat function is subject to the access to information regimes of FOI, EIR. It is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified with a prefix of PMB-CLLR. Those are members of the Performance Management Board itself. Members of the Cabinet are identified with Cabinet CLLR before their name. And all other members in attendance are, for the Member Development Programme, are identified with CLLR. There are officers in attendance and they are identified with a prefix of officer before their name. There is 3 meeting facilitators for this meeting, including a minute taker. The members of the Performance Management Board are Chairman, Councillor Mick Radley, Vice Chairman, Councillor Peter Schweer. The remaining members are James Caldridge, George Coulter, Charlie Dervish, Tony Everard, Steve Renman, Bill Rose, Nick Unsworth. For this evening, members, we have apologies from members of the PMB from Councillor Nick Unsworth. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate and may proceed. I now hand over to the Chairman, Councillor Mick Radley. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma, for that very thorough preparation and introduction to this evening's meeting. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Performance Management Board. My name is Councillor Mick Radley and I'm the Chairman. The agenda for this meeting includes an item pertaining to scrutiny around the Council's budget position. As such, all members of the Council have been invited to attend this evening and participate in the discussion as part of the Council Members Development Programme. Members of the Cabinet are also present in order to present the item and respond to any questions that members may have. However, please note that only members of the Performance Management Board will be able to vote. As this meeting marks the second time in which the budget has been scrutinised in a virtual setting, I would ask everyone to be patient and for their understanding as we undertake this item this evening. I've been assisted by a governance officer and a meeting facilitator who will help me identify when people wish to speak and manage the notifications through the chat function. I obviously can't see you all, so please let me know through the chat function if there are any issues with your internet connection. Please also remember to mute your microphones when you finish speaking. As the meeting facilitator has confirmed the attendance of members and officers of this meeting, I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. So item 1 on the agenda tonight is absence, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence of members of the Performance Management Board?
Chairman, we only have apologies from Councillor Nick Unsworth from the member of the PMB. All other apologies from members who are unable to attend this for the Member Development Programme have been asked to give those via email, and they will be recorded separately. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Emma. So we're just registering Councillor Unsworth, who's absent from the Performance Management Board this evening. Right, if there are no more apologies, I'll proceed to item 2, which is declarations of interest. So declarations of interest, do any members of the Performance Management Board have 1, any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? And secondly, any declaration of the existence and nature of any instruction given by or on behalf of a political group as to how you shall speak or vote on any matter before the committee, or the application or threat to apply any sanction by the group should they speak or vote on a particular matter. Please state the nature of your interest and please indicate in the chat function if you wish to declare. And I'm going to the chat functions. I believe we have 2. Okay, no, those are just notes from Emma. Okay. So on that basis, I can't see any declarations of interest from the Performance Board. So we'll now move to item 3, which is public question time. Members, there are no registered speakers this evening for this evening's public question time. So I'll proceed to item 4, which is minutes of the previous meeting. So minutes of the previous meeting. Members of the Performance Management Board, for this item, I will be seeking your agreement. Therefore, silence will be assent. However, if a member wishes to raise any issue or in respect of the minutes, please indicate via the chat function. So do any members have any objection to the approval of the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting held on the 18th of November 2020? No, I can't. There's nothing coming through on the chat. So on that basis, thank you, members. Your silence is agreement that the minutes are an accurate record. We'll now move to item 5, which is scrutiny of the council's budget for 2021 to 2022, an update. Members, please can I remind you that this report was prepared for Cabinet and was circulated to all members on the 29th of January 2021, following the publication of the Cabinet agenda. All members have received an electronic and hard copy of the budget report. The presentations for this item were circulated to all members today, the 3rd of February 2021, and these will also be made available during the meeting via screen sharing. Before we commence to this item, I would like to set out the order in which members will participate. I will shortly invite Councillor Button as leader of the Council and the Cabinet to make their presentation. Following the presentation, I will open up this item for questions. Members of the board will be invited to ask questions to the Cabinet first, and then I will invite questions from other members in attendance as part of the member development session. I would now like to invite Councillor Butland as leader of the Council to commence the presentation, and can I ask that the presentation be made available on screen? Councillor Butland.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the Performance Management Board. As you so rightly said, this is the second occasion that we have come before you as a Cabinet with the proposed budget for 2021-22. It's fair to say, Chairman, that there have been some significant changes since we met in November. And of course, the budget continues to be set against an uncertain situation with the impact of the pandemic still with us. If I could just move quickly to first screen. I should say that I'm sharing this presentation, Chairman, with Councillor Bebb, so you don't get bored by the same voice. And we will share that. And then on questions, all my cabinet members are here if there are particular issues relating to their portfolios. So in terms of the actual budget, our themes against which we are working are, as we have had for some little while now, around connecting people and places and the other areas that are there. I do just want to say one thing, Chairman. We would normally aim to have an annual plan ready for the 1st of April. I have taken a decision that with the current work pressures on all managers and also the degree of uncertainty, that we will work on an annual plan to be presented at the beginning of September for an 18-month period, which will take us through to the next district council elections in 2023. I think this makes sense. At the moment, there are so many uncertainties that to be asking managers to sort of second guess. I have asked that, of course, they do scoping exercises, etc. But also with the current workload on the authority in a number of areas as a result of the pandemic, we are going to take that approach, which I hope your committee will feel is acceptable. And certainly, of course, we will come back to the committee if they so wish, as I'm sure they will, with the annual plan. In terms of the budget strategy, this is a medium-term plan covering a 4-year period. It contains many of the previous commitments that we've had. For example, we will continue to use the new homes bonus for investment. We will try and secure more reduced costs and increase income without fleecing the taxpayers. To maintain, it says our good services there. I actually think there are at least very good, if not excellent services. To minimise the impact of the disruption upon our customers, manage, of course, the risks, and there are numerous risks that will confront us, some of which are quite different from those that we have faced in previous years. To continue to deliver an investment strategy and at the same time keep to our commitment to be a low council tax authority. As far as the background is concerned, Chairman, the initial proposals were agreed by Cabinet on the 23rd of November. They were considered by the Management Board prior to that meeting, and the report for Cabinet to be held on the 8th of February has been produced. But again, unlike many authorities, we are coming to the Performance Management Board or the scrutiny side before some decisions are taken, or any decisions are taken. And later in the meeting, I will be indicating where we would be very interested to hear from members, as we have not yet determined as a Cabinet which way we will go. So a small number of changes and confirmations have been received, and we now start to get into some of the detail about that. And at that point, I'm going to ask Councillor Bebb if he will take us through the next 3 slides.
Thank you, Councillor Buckland. Can I have the next slide, please? Here we are. Right. Well, we had the provisional allocation announced on the 17th of December, and we have been asked to pass comment on that. The deadline for that was the 16th of January, and we're still waiting to hear further. As you see, the provisional allocation shows a business rate baseline of £3.486 million, which is the same as last year. A lower tier services grant, a new grant of £148,000, and a rural services delivery grant. The council tax referendum principles are the same as before, less than 2% or £5, whichever is the higher for shire district councils. Next slide, please. We have now confirmed that we're joining the Essex Business Rate Pool for 21-22 with a potential share of growth there. That obviously comes out after the end of the financial year, and it will be a bonus when we get it. Now, the homelessness prevention grant of £412,000, it looks as if it's a big increase, when in fact it's a combination of two. It's a combination of the flexible homelessness support grant and the homelessness reduction grant received in 2021. Quite good, fairly good news there. So next slide, please. New homes bonus. Well, that continues for the present. The calculation is exactly the same for 2021, so there'll be no year 11 legacy payment. So we'll forego that, just as happened last year. So the total amount receivable in 21-22 is £1.62 million. And that's based on the fact that there were 1,166 new homes, but the government gave us a threshold of 0.4%, which is 250 homes, above which we will be paid the new homes bonus. So that gives 916 homes, of which the premium is of 173 for affordable homes. Now, this is the last, I think, possibly the last year of this scheme as it is, and they're going to consult for the subsequent scheme for 21-22. Next slide, please. Councillor Butland, you're going to talk to that one. You're muted.
Yes, fairly recently, the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, announced additional funding for local authorities, and that has led us to look again at the proposals that we were thinking of bringing in. So we get an emergency fund allocation of 686,000, which we were not expecting. The local council tax support grant allocation of 190,000, and also the government has committed to the losses compensation scheme. That's losses that local authorities will incur as a result of facilities not being used and fees and charges not coming in, is to be extended into the first 3 months of the next financial year. I think it's fair to say, Chairman, that whilst we would always like more money, there's no doubt that this government has been extraordinarily generous, not just to local authorities, but of course to the businesses and individual members as well, with the support that they've given over what is now nearly a year of the pandemic. So that 686,000 you will hear more about as we go through. So I'll hand back to Councillor Bebb.
Thank you, Councillor Buckland. Well, the business rates retained. Now, there's a bit of a difference here from when we met last time. The final tax-based calculations agreed by the Corporate Director for 2021 are as follows: 4.696 million, which is 1.21 million above the baseline for 2021, and for 21-22, 4.979 million, which is 1.49 above the baseline. Now, these figures are lower than we saw before. They're £306,000 and £93,000 lower, respectively, compared to the figures we looked at in November. Now, the reason for this, we've had another look at this, and we're concerned about the tax collection. More of that in a minute. Business rates tax collection. So we believe we'll have to write off some income in that respect. And we're also concerned about the valuations from the valuation office and any discounts and so on that might be retrospectively imposed. So we've had to take that into account. However, I want to stress that in fact any shortfall will be accounted for in the business rate collection fund and will not impact upon the council's revenue account for 2021. Right, next slide, please. Oh, right. Well, the discretionary rate relief scheme will continue, and we've been doing a lot of work there, distributing a lot of money to businesses quickly. And so there you see the schemes listed. However, there's no announcement on the government on the other retail relief schemes. That's the scheme that was brought in especially for this year for business related for shops, restaurants, cafes, drinking establishments, and so on. And also extended to cover leisure and hospitality businesses. So, as you remember, we had 100% relief given to those businesses for this year only. I'm pleased to say that this afternoon we've heard from the government that they've asked us to hold off sending out business rate bills until at least March the 3rd, when the Chancellor will be making a statement supposedly on possibly continuing these retail relief schemes. So that is possibly promising news. Next slide, please. I wanted to say a word too about the council tax base there. It doesn't look as if it's increased much. And in fact, I just have to explain this. The actual increase on a Band D equivalent for the year was in fact 746 homes, or 1.4%. But in fact, in reality, we've only increased it by 0.65%. The reason for this is to allow for the local council tax support scheme, which accounts for a reduction of 0.4%, and an increase in the single person's discount scheme, which amounts to 0.3%. So that's the reason why that is looking not quite so high. Yeah, I think I'll pass on. Oh yes, and as we're only too well aware, the majority of the 21-22 service budgets presented are an estimate because we don't know how COVID-19 is going to pan out. So as you were aware, we have proposed to set aside £1 million from unallocated balance to meet a shortfall after the COVID funding from the government has been utilised. Okay, next slide, please. Just to show there, fees are proposed to recover costs, or just 1.1%. Note no increase for car park fees. This is good news for the towns. We want to help the retail businesses, so this should be particularly good news all round, I think. Okay, next slide. We don't propose making any changes to the local council tax support scheme. This will continue exactly as we have before, with the claimants of working age pay a minimum of 24% of their council tax liability, and this hopefully will help quite a lot. The estimated cost of the scheme for 21-22 is £7.749 million, and we want to retain the exceptional hardship fund as well. Next slide, please. This is where Councillor Butland is coming in.
Thank you, David. So, Chairman, this slide shows where we were originally before we had notification from the government of the additional 686,000. We were planning on a council tax increase of 2% for 2021-22, which would have given a shortfall, will give a shortfall for the year of 122,000, but that we would withdraw from balances 122,000, meaning that no savings were required in the current year. And over the 4-year medium term, with the increases as shown on the slide, there would be shortfalls in 22-23 through to 24-25, with a significant part of those savings occurring in 22-23 on that basis. Since then, however, as I say, we have had the additional money from the government, and as a result, we have now to make a decision at Cabinet next week as to the way we take it forward. And if I go to the next slide, we have there the potential increases that we asked Trevor Wilson to model for us. The major increase which we could do, which would be 2.86%, and what a 2%, 1% and no percent would, the impact that would have on the revenue account and over the next few years. We also asked that in terms of savings, and it's not shown on this report, whether we might spread the savings target over the 3 years rather than that 1 million saving in 22-23. We have sufficient in our reserves to be able to do that, and that's something that we would want to look at once we have agreed which of these scenarios we would want to go for. So one of the things, Chairman, I think we would be interested in getting feedback from your committee is, should we impose a council tax increase this year, or should we go for no council tax increase on the basis that we know that many people in our community actually are suffering quite significantly financially as a result of either being made unemployed or being furloughed and not having the full income, etc. And although it's only a small proportion of the council tax that is levied by the district council, together with the line that the county council is taking, we could, as local authorities, combined local authorities, try and make things just that little bit easier in these particular circumstances. Of course, the bill will have to be paid over future years, but there is a feeling that actually this is something which is perhaps a proposal that we should give serious consideration to. And as I say, we would welcome any views that members of this committee might have on that particular issue. I'll pass back to Councillor Bebb.
Thank you. I just want to now deal with this long-term empty homes premium, which we've been using in the past. If you look down to the third bullet point, you see from the 1st of April this year, we have the opportunity to give a maximum of 100% for homes empty for 2 to 5 years, 200% on homes empty for 5 to 10 years, and 300% on homes empty over 10 years. That's the maximum we are able to do. There aren't many homes involved. In fact, I think it's 212 homes. And the idea is not to make money out of these owners, but in fact to encourage them to bring them back into occupation. Now, that's what we're proposing doing. I might just say for the 300%, that would amount to 69 homes, of the majority of which are empty homes, MOD dwellings at Wethersfield Airbase. So it's the government are paying for that mostly. We would welcome your views on whether we should continue to do this. As I say, the principle behind it is to encourage owners to bring these homes back into occupation rather than for us to make money. We don't make a lot of money anyway. There's only 212 homes in total. Thank you for that. And then we move on. And this is just showing our anticipated earmark reserves of 16.058 million at the 31st of March next year. And the anticipated unallocated balances then would be £4.767 million, just to give you an update. Thank you. Next slide. I think Councillor Butland, you're going to deal with this now.
Well, just briefly, Chairman, to say there are no changes to the projects in the capital programme. They are as were presented in the initial budget proposal, so we haven't reset them down for you this evening. And therefore, in terms of next steps, Cabinet will meet on the 8th of February and determine, particularly obviously, its council tax, and that will be presented to Council on the 22nd of February. So, Chairman, that's a quick run through, and we are now available to try and answer any questions or queries that you and your members may have. Thank you very much.
Okay, can we take the presentation down? Yeah, okay, that's good. Well done. Okay, thank you very much, Councillors Butland and Bebb, for that presentation. I think it was quite clear, and it's good that it contained also some more recent good news that coming from government that will help us going forward, I'm sure. And I would also like to thank all the Cabinet members and officers for compiling and presenting this update of the budget. Before I open up to questions for other members of the Performance Management Board, I'd like to start with just one opening question. And I really thank the leader for giving us the opportunities for an input into our view on the issue of council tax. And I'm sure my other colleagues will follow and hopefully make some other comment as well. Certainly, my position is that I was surprised that, given that this was a low council tax authority, that we hadn't taken the opportunity to follow the leadership of Essex County Council in freezing council tax. And it's good to see that this option is now open for consideration, at least. And I agree that in a year when people are struggling to recover from the challenges of COVID-19, for 2021-22, I think freezing the council tax would be a good strategy for this council. The cost of that is, as you've seen from the chart, comparing 2% with 0% is £198,000 for next financial year. One other point, when I look at the provision in the budget for the pay award, it actually looks out of line with the Chancellor's spending review statement, where he said that pay would be frozen with the exception of some of the lower grades where it will be about 1%. I know that though the levels of pay are agreed nationally, so we don't have direct influence on that outcome, but from a pure budgeting point of view, I would have thought that in line with that announcement, a provision of around 1% would have been more in line with the Chancellor's statement. So this would 1% actually coincidence actually reduces the cost side of the budget by around £200,000. So that would, in actual fact, that one change in the budget cost side would negate any freezing of the council tax by the same sort of figure. So there are also other issues that support this, and you're quite right that the news that the government is prepared to commit what is at least £900,000 of COVID support next year, which is not currently in the budget. That does throw into the pot something more than we originally thought. Inflation's running low at around 1%. And our unallocated balances at the end of this year will be about £5.2 million, which is a strong position against the recommended minimum of 1.5 million. So we do have some room to absorb something if we have something unforeseen. I also note in the Cabinet report that there are plans to aim to tackle the medium-term shortfall by setting up a working activity, which I think is an excellent initiative and should help reduce the shortfall going forward. So in conclusion, my view is that I think we should be freezing the council tax, and for the reasons I've explained. So I would ask Cabinet to give due consideration to that view. So, Councillor Butland, would you, before I move on to other members, perhaps you'd like to respond on that?
Can I just pick up, Chairman, on your comments on pay award?
Yeah.
Because I can't fault your maths.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't know at the moment. The Chancellor talked about public authorities. Now, I think everybody thought that meant just the NHS. It may just mean the NHS, but we don't know. And will it apply to the police? Will it apply to other services? Will it apply to local authorities, etc.? And clearly, as you quite rightly say, we don't negotiate locally on that. We accept the national situation. So we are in a position. And the other thing I should mention, of course, is that when the Chancellor made that announcement, he said it would not apply to staff who were on, I think the term was median, around about £24,000 a year. And we do have a number of staff within the organisation who would fall into that category. So we've taken a decision at the moment to put aside 2%. Personally, I think it would be better to make that provision if it's not needed because a national pay settlement is lower than that. Well, then so much, we as you say, 200,000. That starts our savings figure there. If we don't put it in and there is a national settlement of 2%, well, then, of course, we've got to find that additional money. So That's the reason, Chairman, we've taken the line we have. It's not to say that it will be 2%, but we don't think it would be higher than 2%. And we think that our provision is, at this stage, the correct thing to do.
Okay, Councillor Batman, thank you for that response and that clarification. I would now like to give the opportunity for other members of the Performance Management Board the opportunity to ask questions. I'd be grateful for members' cooperation to be concise as possible with their questions and not to repeat questions already asked. So do any members of the Performance Management Board have any questions for the Cabinet? If so, indicate in the chat function. I already have notice of some, and I believe the first one of those is Councillor Everard. So I'll hand over to Councillor Everard if you'd like to ask your question.
Thank you very much. Briefly, I do welcome the freezing of the council tax, but I'd like to ask a question, clarification really. Business rates, I assume that includes retail shops, but the question really is, do the online businesses have an unfair advantage in relationship to council tax, to business rates, to retail shops in our town? Thank you.
Councillor Everard. Councillor
Shall I answer that?
Batman, would you like to answer that, or Councillor?
I'll leave that to Councillor Bebb. Could I just say one thing to Councillor Everard? We have not yet made a decision about council tax. So when you say you welcome no increase, I take it you would like Cabinet to consider that seriously. But I'll pass to Councillor Bebb.
Yes, Councillor Everard, I agree. Many small online businesses working from home do have an advantage because they're not, their premises are their own home rather than business premises. So they do have, unfortunately, an advantage in that respect. And currently, there's no facility to really hit them on that respect, unless they've got a substantial online business with obviously separate premises.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So the next question comes from Councillor Rose. Councillor Rose, you'd like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good evening. Yes, I'm not going to preempt any decision by Cabinet regarding council tax, but I quite favour the consideration of freezing for this year. But my question is, Chairman, is that the new homes bonus, which was introduced by government in 2011, is to be reformed. To what extent would a final year of bonus paid to the council affect income? Thank you.
Okay, who would like to take that one?
Councillor Bebb, do you want to?
Yes, certainly. In terms of, it is a bonus, so we put it into a separate pot and use it for infrastructure projects, so it doesn't affect our revenue budget at all. Many councils actually, unfortunately, do put it into their revenue budget, and when there's any reduction in the new homes bonus, it hits them quite severely. So it's not going to affect our revenue budget. It will obviously, if there's going to be a reduction in the future, it would hit the size of the pool that we've got to dip into for infrastructure projects.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bebb. I'll move on to the next question, which comes from Councillor Coleridge. Please, Councillor Coleridge.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to support the proposal for a council tax freeze. I think that the coming year is going to be incredibly tough for the residents of this district, and any little support that we can give as a council would be greatly received by our residents. So I just wanted to put my support behind the council tax freeze proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coleridge. I guess that doesn't require a response, it's just a statement, which is good to have that confirmation. Could I just ask Councillor Rose, are you asking a second question? Is that just for clarification?
No, Chairman, I'll just put it on the chat function, that's all, just the one question.
I'm sorry. Okay,
Thank you.
In which case we move to Councillor Dervish, who'd like to ask a question. Councillor Dervish, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say I do welcome the council tax freeze, just providing that we do have sufficient reserves and not to the detriment of the council, its staff and the services that we currently provide. Also, I've really taken into account our leisure facilities, because obviously they are going to need a lot of funding from our council. So I do welcome it, but just on those provisions that they're taking into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I guess sorry,
I wonder, Chairman, whether Councillor Tattersley would just like to pick up on the leisure issue that Councillor Dervish has raised.
Yes, by all means, yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've actually done a briefing paper for members of the Cabinet on where we are with the support that we're giving to Fusion. The report is, or the briefing note is pretty much a statement of where we are, assuming the council intends to keep supporting Fusion. But we are looking at opportunities to get some grant-aided support from the government, because they've announced that they might do, but as yet we've not really had confirmation about that one. We are pressing them to do it, and I'm happy to share this briefing note with anybody that might want to have a look at it. It's pretty high-level stuff, but it also does go on about what we'd like to do in future. I mean, do we want to keep on with Fusion as being our supplier? Do we want to re-tender it? Will they want to re-tender it themselves? So the report is a little bit wider than just simply saying, yeah, we'll continue to support Fusion the best that we can. But as I said, I'll send Councillor Dervish a copy of this, because I know that she keeps an interest in all things leisure. But anybody else wants one, that's really not a problem. Unless, of course, the leader would prefer that I circulated it to all members. That's an option.
I would suggest through you, Chairman, that it's circulated to all members. That's the easiest way then.
Yes, thank you for that, Councillor Tattersley. That sounds an excellent idea and input to keep members informed, and that obviously will be a significant thing going forward. So I'm sure members will be very pleased to have that additional information. Okay, right. I believe that is. I know Councillor Garrard has registered a question, but we'll take that in a moment. I just want to conclude with members of the Performance Management Board first. Are any other questions coming from members of the Performance Management Board? No, it doesn't look like there is. I just have one further question to add, then I'll pass it over to open up to all members. On the £1 million provision that is there coming from unallocated balances, is that something that you as a cabinet will be reviewing in the light of the confirmed government grants that have been identified recently?
Yes, Chairman, that was we had put £1 million aside before we knew of the 686,000. Now, if it is decided that we will use some of that, if you like, in terms of no increase in council tax for 21-22, then obviously some of that 686,000 will be kept. It will mean we still have a reserve there, because if we knew definitely that from the 1st of April, the new financial year, we weren't going to have COVID around, I think that's very optimistic. And we don't know quite where that might go and what additional costs might fall on local authorities, which may or may not be refunded by government. And we have services, and we've talked to two of them mentioned tonight, parking services and leisure services, etc. Clearly, if the world changed back to normal, if I could use that phrase, tomorrow, there will still be, I suspect, some considerable period until those activities get back to normal. And we don't know, other than an educated guess as to how long that might take. Can I just say so far everybody said yes, we're all in favour of no increase in council tax. I do have to put the health warning and the chart that I showed you, which means that the total shortfall will be greater over the 4 years to the end to 24-25 as a result of that decision. So I don't want to hide things. There's no such thing, Chairman, as you know, as a free lunch. But this is something about how we can smooth it as far as possible for our residents.
Okay, thank you for that confirmation and those additional comments. So I have no further questions. So at this point, I'd like to open up the chat function to all members as part of the members development. I will take, before I lose it on the screen, Councillor Garrard first, because she was.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my apologies for putting that question in early. I just wanted to ask about the emergency fund allocation of 686,000. If there are any constraints on that. I don't know very much about what that can be used for, but if there are any constraints, and also what you might imagine the fund would be used for, and if it is sufficient at this stage.
Okay, thank you for that question. Councillor Councillor Bebb, do you want to take that?
Officer Trevor Wilson will be the best person to answer that.
Okay.
You know the fine print.
Yes, Trevor Wilson, you're there somewhere. Hey.
Thank you, Chairman.
There you
go. Yes, about the use of 686. It really is anybody's guess as to what the actual costs are going to be, the additional costs. I would suspect it would be more about some of the income, the sources of income, which are not covered by strictly fees and charges, where we would have to cover. So it would be things like the leisure service and the additional costs that we will be making or potentially making there, that would need to be funded from the 686 in the first instance. There is the fees and charges income compensation scheme, which will do a lot of the fees and charges, but that will only be to the extent of 75 pence in the pound. So there's still 25p in the pound that we will be responsible for. So that would have to count against the 686 as well. So, but the government has allocated an amount to every single local authority. It's been done on a formula basis. It's similar to the other tranches of funding that we've had, and it has stood us in good stead in the current year, and hopefully that will be sufficient and we won't need to call on the £1 million next year. But as the leader has said, we don't know how long this is going to go on for, and our services will be impacted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Garrard. Councillor Abbott is next. Councillor Abbott, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Chairman?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, well, first of all, to again welcome the approach that's being taken to the budget and the consultation. It's always good to take part in this process. Got three short questions. Firstly, on page 22, it says that the available balance for new homes bonus is just above 1.7 million. I know it's an issue I've raised before, but I'd like to try again, and particularly in the context of COVID recovery. The highways panels have lost half the budget about 4 years ago, and the projection is they will continue to be funded at that level for several years to come. There's a whole raft of schemes in Braintree for walking, cycling, road safety, modal shift. Could the administration again consider assisting with the LHP budget from the new homes bonus? It wouldn't be a revenue issue, it would be purely a capital issue. Second question, on page, get the right page, 91, the very welcome £500,000 for climate change emergency is mentioned. Could we have a little bit more detail, please, around that? Because if you add up the sums in the table there on page 91, they don't come to anywhere near £500,000. So is the idea to spread that? But in any case, could I make a plea, please, that the council considers funding specific community woodlands, not just individual tree planting, but creating new woodlands. It's something that's actually been done for decades, and but it's sort of slowed down in recent years. And I think it'd be a fantastic initiative for the district if we could do this. And my final question, it's mentioned in the papers the council now owns Silver End Doctors Surgery. Is there any movement yet, please, on, and I know the NHS has to take a lead on this, on expanding Silver End Surgery, particularly in light of the very rapid growth in population in Silver End and other catchment villages such as Cressing? And not now, but at some point, could I have a figure, please, for the total accrued Section 106 funds, which are due to go towards the improvement of Silver End Surgery? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. So we have three. I guess, Councillor Butland, there's probably different people answering this. So I'll let you
I'll take the first one. Councillor Schmidt, I'll ask to take the one on climate change and also the process that we're thinking of doing to take that forward. Silver End Doctors Surgery, I'll leave for someone else to offer on that one. It looks like Councillor Tattersley has put his thumb up. Okay. So on the first one, you mentioned Councillor Abbott mentioned cycling and that sort of thing, and he knows that we're working on a cycling strategy, etc. And I would not rule out some of our new homes bonus being used in that respect. I think we would do it through this council rather than, if you like, share responsibility with the local highways panel. In terms of, would it help some of the areas that Councillor Abbott is interested in? It could well. I wouldn't rule that out, but I would want it to be controlled by this authority and not by the local highways panel, on which clearly, the district council has a third share, along with the county council and the parish councils. But I wouldn't rule out some of that resource being used. On the issue of climate change, etc., I'll pass over, if I may, Chairman, to Councillor Mrs. Schmidt.
Indeed.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the £500,000 has been put in the budget for items that we know we already need, that are part and parcel of the ongoing work that we've been doing on climate change. And the rest is there for when the climate change paper has been finalised. It will be coming to council for some further comments in March, and it will be finalised later on in the year. And so that money is there for any projects that may come up from that strategy. As for community woodlands, a subject very dear to my heart, again, Councillor Garrett chaired a subgroup that looked into woods, community woods and trees. That will be coming to Cabinet next week. But again, it is part and parcel of the climate strategy, and so will be looked at in the whole there. We can't look at these things piecemeal. They're too important and there's too many. And so that money is there to see what will be required in the coming year. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Tattersley, I believe you're going to answer the doctor's question.
I think that's something optimistic, Chairman. I'm as confused as anybody about the health facilities in Whitton, I have to say, but there is a meeting with the Whitton Town Council on improving healthcare facilities in Whitton that we're having on the 11th of February, so not very far to go, and there will be a report comes back from them. I think there's still some reluctance from the various doctor surgeries down there, and of course it's very much run by the National Health Service. There were a question about the amount of 106 money that's tucked away somewhere for healthcare facilities in Whitton. I understand it's not really like that. Whenever we do a new development, the National Health Service actually put a bid in what they want for health facilities against those new developments. So that would be held, if there is any, by the National Health Service. But I'll see if there's a clearer. I know you wanted a clear answer that we've got £1 million tucked away for healthcare. I really don't think it's like that. It depends on whether the NHS have actually put in a bid for improved health facilities as a result of new developments that have taken place in Whitton. That's not clear, I know that. But
Chairman, could I just very briefly come back? My question actually wasn't about Whitton, it was about Silver End Doctor Surgery, which is experiencing a lot of pressure because of the growth of housing in Silver End and to in some extent Cressing. And I do know there's accrued Section 106 payments because I sit on planning committee and observe them regularly going through on consents. I'm interested in the meeting to discuss Whitton health facilities improvements because as the local county councillor for Whitton Town Centre, I haven't been invited to that.
Well, apologies for Silver End. I thought the principle would be almost the same, but clearly you're in a better position to answer that one. It's not the district council's meeting, is that? It is actually the Whitton Town Council's meeting, and I would have no authority to invite anybody on that they haven't seen fit to. I think you've made the point before about you'd like to be invited to that, and you've obviously chosen not to do it. But I will write to the clerk and say that you've expressed a desire to attend that meeting as well. Whether that's forthcoming, it really is out of my hands.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Tattersall. Councillor Abbott, does that conclude sufficient at this stage?
Thank you very much, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, next on is Councillor Beavis. You'd like to ask a question. Councillor Beavis, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief statement, if I may. I really do support the concept of freezing the council tax for 21-22. One has to be mindful that also the parish councils mainly and also county are looking at this freeze as well. And if we take that as a bigger effect of all of the tiers of local government, taking that stance, I think it will make a help to our local communities. I also feel that, it's about the district council actually making the statement that we do understand the pain that many of our residents are going through at this time. And I also appreciate there is a sting in the towel, but it's about, this time and this moment, and this is when people need it most. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. I guess that is a statement, not necessarily asking for a response. That's fine.
Indeed.
I think that's useful feedback to the Cabinet. So thank you for that. I'll now move on to Councillor Van Dorkin. Would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. We've spoken a lot about spending, which is, of course, part of the budget. The other part is income and revenues. And on page 52, when it talks about business rates, there are a couple of pages of spreadsheets on the business rate income. There's a figure of £884,000, a provisional figure for estimated losses on business rate collections. I just wonder if perhaps Councillor Bebb could elaborate a bit on how this may affect us in the short term and indeed the longer term. If it does reflect, it obviously reflects the difficulty that businesses are having and potentially not being able to continue business when we come out of this. Thank you very much.
Yes, it's a fair point. We have been reminding businesses. They don't always necessarily respond. We also have the difficulty that the magistrate courts have been closed because of COVID, and we haven't been able to take legal action. And so that has held us up. Otherwise, we may have been able to recover some of that by now. But we will continue to recover that. If at the end of the day we are unable to recover it all, and there's always that possibility, it will hit the business rates collection fund and will not affect the revenue account at all. But it is frustrating for us, and we're not alone, because when I was in a meeting with other portfolio holders for finance across the county just before Christmas, most of the other authorities are in the same situation as us, some worse than us. I might just say that for council tax, we are about 1 to 1.5% behind what we would normally be, and we're actually one of the highest collection rates for council tax amongst all the other authorities in Essex. So it's not all bad news. It's just that business rates, where the business rate collection is probably twice as bad as the council tax, which is about 2 to 3% down, I think. Is that correct, Trevor?
Trevor?
Yes, that is correct. If I could just add, Chairman, in terms of the current year, the government has offered some support in respect to business rates. So if councils aren't collecting what they anticipated they were going to collect, then there is to be a scheme for the current year. Whether that will be taken into the next financial year, we wait to see. The 884,000 that Councillor Van Dolken referred to is obviously an estimate, and as Councillor Bebb has said, that would play its way through the collection fund in the first instance, and then have to be dealt with in the subsequent years. The other thing that the government has allowed for is that losses in a year, which are normally have to be accounted for in the following year, are to be spread over a 3-year period, and the government has mandated that we are required to spread a loss over 3 years now. So the same applies with council tax, but we're not anticipating being in a major problem in that respect. Obviously, I think, as Councillor Bebb said, we are keeping a close eye on.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much for that response. Going back to the chat, we have next on is Councillor Pell. Hey, would you like to ask your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see in the budget the Councillor Community Grant Scheme is still there, but my question relates to this year, this financial year. A lot of us have allocated money to various groups, but because of they're closed and unable to meet and things like that, they've been unable to take advantage of their grant. Is it possible to have that grant money carried over to next year so that those organisations, when they get going, will not be penalised and lose it?
Can I comment? That
Yes,
happened last
indeed.
year. That happened last year. We had a carryover from last financial year because of COVID, and I'm anticipating that we will be doing the same. Is that correct, Trevor?
Yes, it is, David. You recall we had a conversation. We were going to review the councillor grant system this year, but given everything that's going on, we've decided we will let it continue to run this year. But during the course of this year, we will look at whether that is still the appropriate way to do it or not. So, through you, Chairman, the answer to Councillor Mrs. Pell is yes. We understand that many organisations would by now have spent the money or used the money that was given to them by their local councillors, and we wouldn't want to penalise them because of circumstances beyond their control. So you will be able to go forward with that, and the scheme will continue for 21-22.
Okay, that's good news. Thank you for that. I believe I may have missed Councillor Thorogood earlier, so I've been prompted. So I will invite Councillor Thorogood to speak now, please, if you would.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just starting to get a bit paranoid there, so thanks.
I'm sorry about that. Over to you.
Okay, thanks. Just a question on costs and a question on revenue, if I may. How much has the North Essex Garden Communities project cost Braintree District Council in total, including BDC staff costs to date? And on revenue, I know BDC, Braintree Council, has made a saving of 55,000 due to investments in the Ipswich incinerator. How is this saving made? Is it through landfill saving, sorting saving, or reduced gate fees? And does our investment terms mean Braintree Council is contractually obliged to supply a level of waste to the incinerator? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Councillor Thorogood. Councillor Butland, I believe, first.
Yeah, I'll take the first one, and I think probably Councillor Mrs. Schmidt will take the second one.
Okay.
On the first one, the answer has been given on several occasions before. I will happily send Councillor Thorogood the answer that was given last time. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Schmidt, I believe, on the other question.
Chairman, I think Councillor Thorogood's been just a little disingenuous because he has actually put a written question in regarding this subject, the answer which will be coming out to you tomorrow. We haven't funded the Ipswich incinerator. This is the company who deals with our recycling. The fact that they happen to have an incinerator is really neither here nor there. And so you will see from the written question that you put in, you'll receive the answer tomorrow to clarify the very, very small amount that is incinerated, which is recycling that cannot be recycled. You'll see your answer tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, councillors, for that. Councillor Thorogood, that sounds like that's in progress and you'll get that tomorrow. So to further reinforce that answer. So we'll move on now to Councillor Mann, please. Councillor Mann, you'd like to ask your question?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I noticed in the small print there's still the fighting fund for appeals against speculative applications that we might be inclined to refuse. Officers have indicated that they will take a robust approach to sites that they consider to be unsuitable. We had, I think, in the budget for the last couple of years, something like $500,000, and I hope that that will be sort of maintained for the coming financial year. But my question concerns statement on page 29 that I don't quite understand. There is to be a review of or a consultation and review on fees for planning, pre-application, device service and street naming, numbering. Following this scheme of delegation that we have approved, how will or how can the scheme of delegation affect planning fees charged? How will it potentially change them? Now that might be quite a technical question, and I'm quite prepared to wait for a written answer if necessary.
Chairman, could I ask Councillor Mrs. Spray?
Indeed, yes, Councillor Spray.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Butland. Yes, Councillor Mann, I think what I will need to do is to get you the details of that from officers, but it was, if I can recall, part of a scheme of delegation that there would be a review of, in particular, of pre-application fees and related costs, but I can't, off the top of my head, I haven't got the exact detail of how that process will work. I will get the answer for you.
That's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Councillor Spray, for that response. We'll move on now, and the next one is Councillor Raymond, I believe. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just a brief statement. I would like to show my support for the proposal of council tax freeze for the next year. And I would request the Cabinet to, as a local authority, it's nice and to show the support to the residents that we do care and we understand the situation we are in. And I would just like to request the Cabinet to seriously consider this proposal at their next Cabinet meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Raymond, thank you for that statement. That's another good piece of information, I guess, for the Cabinet in their deliberations. So looking at my list, I believe I next have Councillor Everard is coming back for a second question. Councillor Everard.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to extol the efforts that we have been giving to leisure and the leisure centre. I, in fact, use that quite a bit, and but the big thing about that is the youngsters. It's surrounded with youngsters so keen on their leisure, running, and all the pursuits that they follow, but it goes across the age groups as well. But it's so important to support leisure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Everard. I think that's more of a statement than asking a question, which is good. More information.
Well, sorry, Chairman.
Okay, please feel free to respond.
I know that's rude of me to interrupt, but Councillor Everard might want to see the Cabinet report where we had the scrutiny into leisure facilities provided in the district. I think some of the issues that he's mentioning about younger people have been addressed in that scrutiny, and I'll be doing some work to respond to what the recommendations are. But have a look at it, because I think it'll meet your expectations, and I think it'll be something that you'd probably be interested in.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tattersley, thank you for that support and further comments, which I'm sure is very useful to everyone. I believe that is the conclusion. Is there anybody else, before I draw this item to a close, is there anyone that I've forgotten that would like to ask a further question? No, I believe that is conclusion. Emma, have I missed anybody?
No, Chairman, you've asked every member who's indicated they wish to ask a question this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for that confirmation. So,
apologies, Chairman. Councillor Butland is just indicating. Thank you.
Councillor Butland, do you have a question?
Well, no, question. Well, it is a question. I mean, there've been a number of, I think 4 or 5 questions that have been asked tonight, which I'm sure the answers would be welcomed by all members. Would you be agreeable, Chairman, if we were to capture those questions and answers and put them on one piece of paper, one email to go out to members, and undertake that those answers are given ahead of the full council on the 22nd of February?
Yes, that seems an excellent idea, to capture all those and to send them out. So yes, I think, unless anybody has any objection on the Performance Management Board, my other members, I would agree with that. That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
We'll do that, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, right. Thank you all very much for your participation in this item. Emma, officers, are there any items where the Cabinet is going to respond? I guess that's on that list that Councillor Butland suggested is we need to add those in, yeah?
Yes, Chairman, we have got a record with our note taker of those questions. So we will ensure that those questions are coordinated and circulated in time for full council. Thank you, Chairman. Okay, thank you for that. So members, during the debate, Cabinet has agreed to respond on a series of items that the officers have taken note of. In addition to noting the Cabinet's presentation and the report, we also make the request for Cabinet to consider and respond on those items. For this item, I will be seeking your agreement, therefore silence will be assent. However, if a member of the Performance Management Board wishes to raise an issue in respect of this, please indicate via the chat function. Please, can I have member agreement? Nothing coming through on the chat, so I would say thank you, and members, your silence is agreement, and we will move on now to deal with item 6. Members, this concludes the discussion on this item. Before I proceed to item 6, I would like to thank Councillor Butland and members of the Cabinet for their attendance and presentation tonight, and indeed for the support of officers in that presentation. I would also like to thank those members, all of those members present, for their attendance and contribution to the meeting. I believe and hope, Councillor Butland and Cabinet, that the range of response you've had gives you some good feedback and information to take forward to your deliberations at Cabinet. So, although members of the Performance Management Board are required to stay for the next item of business,
All other members may leave the meeting. If you are of course to remain welcome to remain and observe the rest of the meeting if you so wish. So I will just pause for a minute. If anybody would like to sign off, they can. Otherwise, I shall move on to the next item of the Performance Management Board meeting. A few screens flickering. Okay,
Chairman,
I'll carry on.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just going to invite you to deal with agenda item 6, please. Thank you.
Indeed, yes, indeed. Okay, so I'll move on now to agenda item 6 of the Performance Management Board, and that is the Performance Management Report. Members, this report is set out on pages 6 to 43 of the agenda. Members, before I invite Tracy Headford, Business Solutions Manager, to introduce the report, please can I remind you that this is a reflective report for the second quarter of 2021, which is the period July to September 2020. I'd now like to invite Tracy Headford to present her report. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So yes, you have the second quarter performance management report in front of you, and as just advised, this does report between the period of the 1st of July until the 30th of September, and the report was presented to Cabinet back in November. So to summarise, in the second quarter, we've had 1 project that has been completed, 46 projects that are on track, 5 projects that have an amber status, and 1 project that has been cancelled. So the project that has been cancelled is in respect of creating gardens of remembrance in some of our cemeteries. This is due to the pandemic and obviously the first lockdown that we had during last year, which occurred during our planting season. Obviously, to create the gardens, we need to be able to carry this out in the planting season. So it was decided to cancel the project and move it on to next year so that we could undertake the works in the spring, summer of 2021. The 5 projects that have an amber status, I will quickly go through those for you. So the first one is in respect of the redevelopment of the entrance of Whitton Town Park. Again, the delays are caused by the pandemic because we haven't been able to carry out any works. There has been some background work that has continued, so we've continued with the consultation that needed to take place on the area, and obviously the getting the tenders in place for the works. But overall, the project has experienced some delays, so it is going to impact on the end timescale of the project. So there's a reason it's marked up as amber. Again, similar for the trial of the anti-littering signage along some of our strategic routes in the district. It was originally proposed to start that during the first lockdown of the year to coincide with the dates for the Keep Whitting Tidy Spring Clean campaign. But it was decided to postpone this due to the fact that the levels of traffic would significantly reduce over this time because of the first lockdown. And it was proposed to relaunch this campaign in November, and many of you have probably seen this has now gone live, and you would have seen the signs that are on our strategic routes. So we will be reporting against that in future performance reports. The third project is around the improving the sports facilities at the Braintree Sports Centre and Leisure Centre. Again, it's been marked up as amber because of the delay caused by the pandemic. It's largely due to the fact that it is the leisure facilities, and we have experienced delays with Fusion being furloughed, and obviously that has had an impact due to the end dates. So it is currently on hold until we can understand where we're at with the pandemic regarding that. And again, it's the same for the commencement of the 3G pitch at Housestead Leisure Centre because of the having to sign off the legals with Essex County Council and Fusion, and the furloughing of staff that has been delayed because of that. But the planning permission has been granted and the funding has been agreed for the project. So once the leases have been signed, the works will start in that respect. The last one is to look to develop the health priorities in various localities across the district in partnership with the NHS primary care networks. Understandably, the NHS primary care networks have got other things to deal with at the moment, and they are responding to the crisis. So they are focusing on the COVID recovery, and it's hoped that talks can resume later on in the year, and the project will get back on track once we are more in a recovery mode moving forward, rather than dipping into recovery back into respond mode. So moving on to the performance indicators, we've got a total of 25 performance indicators in the annual plan. Targets have not been set for all of them, given the disproportionate impact the pandemic would have had on setting some of the targets. We do still have 14 performance indicators that have retained their targets. Of these, 7 have met or exceeded their targets, 3 have missed targets by less than 5%, and 4 have missed target by more than 5%. So I'll just quickly take you through those performance indicators. So firstly, dealing with the ones that have missed target by more than 5%. The first one is in respect of the percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling or composting. That's achieved 53.08% against the target of 60%. And just to remind you that that target of 60% is set by the Waste Partnership. So it's not just in respect to Braintree District Council, it's across the Waste Partnership Board. It has increased from the first quarter. And obviously there has been some suspension of the garden waste that did impact on the second quarter as well, because we just reintroduced the partial service, and full service didn't actually commence until mid to the end of July. There has been an increase in tonnage in the second quarter. It is being seen across a lot of districts, and they think it's as a result of more people working from home. And obviously there is an increase in tonnage and also general waste and recyclable waste. Again, like as I said, 8 out of 10 councils have actually reported that there has been an increase in the amount of materials collected since the COVID outbreak. And again, this is an area that is being monitored. Moving on, the other performance indicator that's missed target by more than 5% is in respect of the average waiting time for applicants on the disabled facilities grants. That has achieved 149 days against a target of 90 days. Again, this service has largely been impacted by the pandemic, as during lockdown there were restrictions that prevented properties being visited to be able to assess the works that were actually required. This in turn impacted on builders being able to provide quotations for the works as well. Overall, there is a knock-on effect to the outturn in the second quarter because of the delays that's being caused by the pandemic in not being able to go into the premises to visit them and approve the works. And this is unfortunately going to continue. We are obviously largely monitoring the situation, but it is going to take some time to get back to how things have been. And I will say it is expected to get worse before it will actually get better. But just to add to that, any critical grants, such as being able to install stair lifts, grab rails, so anything that's classed as a critical fix, is actually being carried out and quickly. So this is more in respect of where the works are a little bit more in depth, where they are requiring works to sort of bathrooms to create them into wet rooms, example, might require additional building works and planning permission. So this is sort of more where there's major works involved and not just sort of the critical works such as installing stair lifts, which are being dealt with in time. Moving on, the average call answering time in the customer service centre achieved 34 seconds against the target of 15 seconds. 34 seconds is still a good answering time in comparison with a number of other organisations, but it is still far from what our corporate target is. In the second quarter, the customer service centre saw an increase of over 13% of calls on the first quarter and handled over 30,500 calls. A lot of the calls in that second quarter were in respect of bulky waste collections, where the service resumed because it had been cancelled previously because of the lockdown. And in respect of pest control, that service always increases over the summer months as well. Bulky waste collections, as a result of the high number of calls we were getting from that, the service was increased from 3 days a week to 5 days a week to deal with the huge demand that we're experiencing, and that is still the case at the moment. So we are still receiving quite a high demand in respect to that. It is expected that the call answering time will come down And during the summer months, we did have additional resources to cover the phones. But when the offices reopened by appointment only in September, some of those resources were reallocated to the reception area and the reception duties that are required. But as I said, it is expected that the call answering time will reduce over time. Lastly, the performance indicator for collection of business rates achieved 54.9% against a target of 57.95%. Again, as has already sort of been discussed earlier, performance is lower than the same period last year, and it is because we want to reduce net collectible amount because of the extended retail relief scheme, which has meant that many businesses are not having to pay anything for this year. I will say the revenues team have been sending out soft reminders and telephoning or texting those businesses that are in arrears. And across all Essex authorities, Braintree District Council is one of the best performing councils in respect of our collection rates. Moving on to the amber performance indicators. So the performance indicators have missed target by less than 5%. We've got the performance of invoices paid within 30 days of receipt. That achieved 96.86% against the target of 99.25%. In the second quarter, we processed 2,489 invoices out of a total of 2,569 within the 30 days required. We have had to amend the processes because obviously with more staff working at home, we've had to adapt our working to accommodate that. And the finance team are now looking at a new system to be able to help streamline that process. So again, that's looking to improve over time as well. The percentage of stage 1 complaints responded to within 7 working days achieved 87.8% against the target of 90%. In the second quarter, we had 123 stage 1 complaints, and of those, 108 were responded to within the timescales. The majority of complaints were not responded to within the 7 working days, did require additional time to be able to provide a comprehensive response due to the complex nature of the complaints that were received. We always make sure that customers are kept informed of any delays, and mainly occurred within the planning department. And again, as I said earlier, it's because they were quite complex and often lengthy complaints. It did take a lot of time to be able to respond to and to make sure we could provide a full and comprehensive response. The last one is in respect of the collection rate for council tax, where we achieved 57.63% against a target of 58.8%. Performance is marginally down on the same period last year. And again, this is obviously due to the pandemic. Again, the revenues team have only been sending out soft reminders or telephoning or texting those council taxpayers which are in arrears. Again, that approach does seem to be working. It's having a positive impact. And again, our performance compares really, really well to other authorities. And we are one of the best for that second quarter. The report does also contain further information on our staffing levels, health and safety information and complaints. In respect to the complaints, we had 129 complaints in total in the second quarter. It is a slightly higher than the number of complaints received in the first quarter. As I said earlier, 123 in respect to stage 1. There were 4 stage 2 complaints and 2 stage 3 complaints. In respect to the health and safety information, there has been an increase in the number of verbal assaults on staff. This is mainly due to the different scenarios really. So we've had a housing applicant who was verbally abusive to an officer and made some verbal threats. There was an officer who was carrying out a pest control visit that was verbally abused by a resident. One of our waste operatives was verbally abused while collecting waste. And one of our COVID wardens, whilst they were patrolling around the shops in our high streets, received some verbal abuse from a shop owner who was not following the rules. We do encourage our staff to report all verbal assaults or verbal abuses on them so that we can obviously make sure that we are providing all of our staff with the support that is required. And obviously at that time when they are reported, we will always make sure we are taking the necessary steps to deal with them. And if it does mean having to involve the police, then we will do at that time. Moving on to the financial performance, the report provides an updated review of the financial position for the year as at the end of September 2020. It examines the latest forecast for spending on day-to-day service provision compared to the budget for the year. Also includes a summary of Treasury management activities, projected movements on the general fund balance, and a summary of the spending to date on the capital projects. Overall, it is fair to say that during the second quarter, due to the pandemic, resources on the day-to-day delivery of services were affected. Staff were obviously redirected to deal with a number of challenges that we faced, and we had to adapt to reacting to the requirements and expectations of our residents and businesses at the time, as we obviously started to recover from the first lockdown. But I think despite all of this and everything that's really been thrown at staff of the council, the performance of the council in the second quarter was good, and we have continued to perform well. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Tracy, thank you very much for that. A very thorough and comprehensive report. So we really appreciate you doing that for us. Before I open up to other members, I've just got a couple of comments to make. I think overall, the staff are doing an excellent job in coping with the many changing circumstances this year and the challenges that have been faced. And you're correct. Overall, the performance has been affected, but you know, still a lot of things are still move forward. So I think in the circumstances, it's you know, it's a good situation. No, not good situation. It's a good performance by the staff. So I think they deserve a well done for that, and being very flexible, responding to the priority needs of the district. So please pass on our thanks. And lastly, regarding the financial performance this year, I think that's worthy of note. You know, a lot of things have happened this year, or happening still. But taking into account all the support that we've got from government, or had from government, and continue to get, which Councillor Button has previously mentioned, and indeed the actions taken by officers to reduce cost and maximise income, the income is very close to balancing with the expenditure and showing a forecast variance of positive £17,000, which is only a small amount, but it actually got to a position where, having gone through several months of this turmoil, to still be in a position where we're predicting to come out of it being with only a small positive variance is an excellent situation, and again, a very good performance, and everyone involved in this should be congratulated for that what they've done, officers and members involved in that process. So at that point, I'd like to open up to other members of the PMB who wish to speak. So do we have anybody who would like to ask a question? So yes, we've got a couple. So I think first is Councillor Dervish. So Councillor Dervish, perhaps you'd like to ask your question.
Hello, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Tracy, for your detailed report. Not so much a question, but more of a statement, and I think I'm just going to echo what you've just said, Mr. Chairman. Everyone's had to deal with challenging times, and I commend all the staff at Braintree District Council for the way they've handled and supported residents and supported us as councillors as well. I do not have concerns that some of the KPIs have slightly slipped. I'm not concerned about that in the slightest, and I don't think anyone else should be, especially whilst we live through such a pandemic. I'd also like it minuted and passed on to all staff. I believe they're doing a sterling job. Keep up the good work, and we support you wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you for that, very much for that statement. I totally support that. Councillor Rose, you're next, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'd just like to open just by saying to Tracy, I really appreciate the work that they're doing, all the staff and the officers, in what is a difficult situation, because we don't have access to everybody in the Causeway House, and they're working from home, and I think they do a brilliant job. My question really is, Tracy, is that you made mention of it regarding the redevelopment of Whitton Town Park entrance, which is on page 13 of your report. It says we've been able to progress the tender process for the works to resurface the car park and removal of the foundation of a previous building. Are we governed by a fixed price on that, or would the contractors come back and say in 6 months' time, because they haven't been able to do anything, that they put their prices back or review their prices to us? Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that question. Would you like to attempt to answer that?
I'll attempt. I don't actually know the answer to that question. I would have to find out and come back to you. I would imagine that we would obviously have negotiated that at the time and would have had a fixed price. Whether or not there's any members here that are actually able to answer that, but if not, I will come back to you on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Chairman.
I will just open up to any other members that might be here and not part of this that might want to be able to answer. No? Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that. So we now move on to Councillor Courtauld, please. Councillor Courtauld, your question.
Thank you, Chairman. Tracy, I've been contacted by a group of very sweet, rather old inhabitants of Essex who are incredibly keen on the idea of eco-friendly woodland burial. And I noticed we did a report, a feasibility study on this, and decided that it wasn't going to work. And I was just wondering if I could pass that report on to them, or if it's confidential, or if there's anything published that I could tell them, because they're obviously very keen and they've obviously been trying to find something out about it and failed to do so. Do we have anything I can pass on to them?
It looks like Sherry's got an answer to that one, so I'll let Sherry deal with that.
Well done. Well done. Over to you, Sherry.
So Councillor Courtauld, that was a report on a specific site for woodland burial options, and it was not suitable because of the nature of the site itself. So that was an internal report, not meant for publication. I don't know that doesn't mean that it can't be shared with them. I would need to read it again and just double check. If not, then because that's not about woodland burials in total, that's just about that individual site. So I'm sure that our head of operations would be happy to have a conversation with them if that would help and find out what support they need, but might be a better way around it.
Is there, I think they were thinking of this for themselves rather than for anyone else.
Okay.
Is there an alternative site being considered, or was it just a sort of one-off?
So we there was just one of our sites that we looked at. So there isn't in terms of our land, but that doesn't mean that we're not aware of anything. So I would be more than happy to get our head of operations or one of his team to contact them if you would like to send me their details offline.
I will. Thank you very much, Sherry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sherry, for that support there and answering that question. Councillor Everard, you have a question or a statement you wish to ask. Please go ahead.
When I can find the when I first started to read this, I wrote down 1 or 2 questions, but I kept on reading through everything, and a lot of answers that they were all there, sort of thing. And so I think that this was a really comprehensive report on our state at the moment, and we've done very, very well in coping with all the problems. That's all really that I want to say.
Okay, well, that's good to show that support, and that's very good. So thank you for that. Councillor Sphere, you would wish to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd just like to support not only your comments, but Councillor Dervish and for the report tonight, and I agree with those comments and just wanted to contribute to that. My question really refers to page 6 with regards to the rollout programme on broadband, stating that 89% of superfast broadband we have now got access. I presume this applies to Braintree District Council and not the whole of Essex. And my understanding is that the superfast speed is 24 megabits to some authorities, but also other organisations would class superfast as 30 megabits a second, with obviously potentially between 10 and 11% of Braintree District Council not being covered. Do we have any idea when it's going to be covered? My reason for asking this, I think, is fairly obvious, is that since COVID-19 and lockdown, the amount of people working from home, and I think more importantly, especially now, the amount of education that is going on via broadband too, for everybody's benefit, families and the children concerned, is that I think it would be apt to look into this in some detail and find out actually when the other 10% is going to be completed across the district, and also what speed and what state it's going to be, and the delivery time, because I think this has been highlighted by COVID-19 and the situation that we're in, and I feel that a lot of residents would encourage this to be completed as soon as possible. I appreciate this is rather technical, and I'm quite willing to have a written answer on this. Thank you.
I can actually answer some of that for you now.
Okay, good.
Mainly because I'm having my road dug up at the moment by Gigasphere, who are laying the super fast broadband. I should be able to answer some of the questions. I do know that the programme is running until December 2021, and that was always the plan. They have been continuing with the programme. I think it was delayed slightly during the first lockdown, obviously because we didn't know how we needed to work, but that has obviously now been continuing. And I think as at the end of December, we are likely to achieve, I think it's around sort of like the 94-95% rate, which is obviously on target for where we need to be. At the moment, we are only at the 89%. It was obviously delayed a little bit, and I can only report obviously when I know there has been an increase in where that has obviously been rolled out. But as I said, I do know they're rolling out at the moment, because half of my road you can't access at the moment, and I can't even park on my own driveway. But I will find out some more of the detail for you, and I will get that included in a written response for you.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just come back on that?
Indeed,
and also
yes,
say,
please.
My concern also is there a different variance and a split between rural and urban? Because I'm concerned that smaller rural communities are potentially going to be last on the list. And obviously in that situation, there's obviously families involved, and for all the reasons I spoke earlier, it would be interesting to find out what the rollout is for finishing on the rural as well as the urban as well. And that would be important. Thank you.
Yes, I think given the situation we have today, it's a very good question, and I'm sure one a lot of people will have. And so having shall I say, a more detailed written response on that, I believe will be useful for everyone. So if you could take that away, Tracy, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, not a problem.
Okay. Right, Cherry, you want to ask a question or make a comment?
It's just to come back on the broadband point. So
yeah.
So for Councillor Sphere and for others, there is a website, superfastessex.org, where you can look up interactive maps, and that will tell you what the plans are for your area. So you can see what the plans are in terms of rural and urban rollout over the next phases of the broadband rollout. It's also got lots of information on what the impacts have been. There's lots of FAQs on there. So just for those of you that want to write it down, it's superfastessex.org.
Okay, that sounds very, very useful information. So thank you for that, Cherry. That sounds good. Okay, I believe that concludes the questions. I can see nobody else in the chat box. So I have no further questions myself. So last call, really. Anybody else? Any more questions? No? Okay. So thank you, members, and thank you, Tracy, for your participation in this item. Members, the recommendation set out on page 6 asks that we note the report. So I will be seeking your agreement and will take your silence as assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue, please indicate in the chat via the chat function. Please, can I have member agreement? Okay, nothing in the chat box, so no objection. So thank you, members. Your silence is agreement that the report, that we note this report. So thank you, members, and Tracy, for your attendance this evening. Members, item 6 concludes our business for this evening, so I will close this meeting of the Performance Management Board at, oh dear, I can't see the time. Anybody at the time?
Chairman, before you close, I believe Councillor Swear just put his hand up.
Councillor Sphere, did you put your hand up? You have to go on mute, off mute. You're on mute, Councillor Sphere.
Sorry, I was moving some papers. It probably just caught on the camera, but no, thank you.
Apologies.
Okay, right. So in which case, I will close this meeting of the Performance Management Board at exactly 2100 hours. Thank you, members, for your attendance this evening, and to those watching the broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. I will now hand over to the meeting facilitator.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, members, before you start to good night for the evening, can I just close the meeting, please? So, members, before I close the meeting and ask the webcast to terminate the broadcast, please can I remind members that we will be retaining performance data to your connections to this meeting in the event that we have a legal challenge. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and could I ask the webcasting officer to terminate broadcast?